Welcome, friends, and thanks so much for choosing to be with us on this Saturday. Special thanks right from the start. You'll see Rhonda Jacobs there, who's signing for those with hearing loss. And I'm just so glad you can be here, Rhonda. Thank you. And just so glad that our friends with hearing loss are able to participate. So I'm Tara Brach. I'm joined by Spring Washam, who's wonderful Buddhist teacher, author of several books, including the most recent, A Fierce Heart. So just to let you know about that, and Wise in the Ways of Indigenous Healing. So it brings together really beautiful streams of Dharma and healing. And she's a creative, passionate human and a new friend, which feels good. We crossed paths a couple of years back, and we were kind of had in mind that we'd look for the right time to teach together. And then about a month ago, I got an email from Spring saying, "What can we do? Question mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark." So it was just right in the thick of how much horror was coming to surface about racial violence. So this is what's unfolded, a conversation about anti-racism revolution. And Spring will start in with a meditation, and we'll have another reflection at the end. And between that, we'll see how it unfolds. So blessings, Spring. Thanks so much for being with me on this.
Oh, I feel really honored to be with you, Tara. And I'm so glad that you answered my email right away. Actually, it was like within an hour, you were, what can we do? Let's move forward. Let's meet. So thank you for that. And your leadership has been very inspiring. So it's an honor to be with you and to be with everyone today as we have this conversation. I hope that it's helpful and meaningful and inspiring. And so we'll start, let's do about just a few moments of meditation, maybe 5 minutes of just grounding and allowing for all those all over the world who are logging on moment by moment to just come into this kind of still space of sitting together. And so let's just really start with ground. You know, I know many of us, we feel groundless right now. There's so much happening. And to keep coming into your body. So we want to ground in the body, and we definitely want to ground in the heart as we sit and hear this dialogue that will happen between Tara and I. So let's maybe begin, if you can, with just finding wherever you are, if you're in the car, you're at home, in a chair, or outside, wherever you find yourself, begin to feel ground under you. Maybe it's the carpet you feel, or feel the sitting bones touching earth or making contact as we just begin with just grounding in the body. With the meditation practice, remember, it's not about ever escaping. It's about opening to being here, alive in this human body, which is hard at moments. So just begin by maybe noticing the rhythm of your breathing. And as you begin to feel your body, see if you notice any places of tension or tightness, particularly in your neck and your shoulders. And maybe just move your shoulders and your neck around a little bit here. Relaxing your face and your jaw. Let your hands be relaxed. Notice how your hands are sitting. Are they folded? Are they clenched? Are they placed in a gentle way? So noticing the hands. Now bring your awareness into the belly. Also the hara, this belly center, part where we not only digest food, but we digest life. We digest energy. So you might want to place your hand on your belly, right under your belly button, and take some deep belly breaths. just letting go of any tightness. As you breathe in and then breathing out. Just a moment here, another moment or two of just grounding with the belly. Letting go, letting the body soften so it can be receptive and open. This topic can be very triggering for some people. And so we want to attune the body towards compassion in this moment, toward groundedness in this moment, towards love in this moment. Now bring your awareness to your heart center, and just maybe you want to place one of your hands on your heart as you invite in a deeper listening, a deeper wisdom to come forward. Inviting your heart medicine, your wisdom into this conversation. So feeling the heart, noticing what is present, emotion or tension, knowing that it's all okay. It's welcome at this moment in time, and this experience of this body right here, right now. Breathing in and out of the heart. And as we begin this conversation, knowing that our hearts are together in this topic, in this time of revolution, that we come together in deep compassion for the benefit of all beings everywhere.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I'm just so aware we use the word revolution, and it's just so radical just to be here and awaken our bodies. So, Spring, I mentioned you'd start in, and I'm wondering if you'd speak some on, because we kind of said, okay, the language, anti-racism, revolution, how this has been unfolding for you and what has been challenging and inspiring and gives you a sense of this being a revolution these recent days.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just aware my heart feels really full right now. Just being here, just that meditation, just putting my awareness in the heart. It's like, oh my gosh, it's holding so much. And I think for a lot of it, for me, it's been really mixed every day. I feel deeply inspired. That's something huge. We're in a revolution, and that always feels exciting and fills with possibility and hope for a better world and optimism, that comes. Revolution is like the old is going and there's something new coming, and there's an excitement. So I hold that on one side, my heart holds that. And then it holds the other of the sorrows of all of what's happening in our communities. And being that, as I shared with you, I'm biracial, being, African-American and white, I hold this complexity of my people and, and so this sorrow of wanting to do something, which led me to wanting to reach out to you. What happened, which really would open my awareness, was a couple days before George Floyd's murder. My sister and I were just taking a walk near Spirit Rock Meditation Center in West Marin, where I was moving to a house, and we were stopped on the road by this woman harassing us. And it just, I couldn't believe it, you know, and it just was like, uh-oh, this is reached a certain level. And then George Floyd, and then that seemed to have been like a huge catalyst, along with all the other killings, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. And so, so I feel like at this moment, I'm just holding this complexity of this deep pain in my heart around the harm of racism and the sorrow of it. And then there's this optimism of the revolution, and, you know, and then we're in the backdrop of a pandemic. So it's just, I'm just trying to grow my capacity to be present with all of these changing moments of the revolution, something's going on, oh my God, the sorrows, and, you know, and then to try to know that I have the capacity to be here and to walk through this time, and that I want to help. I want to be a leader. I want to help our Oakland communities, you know, the Washington, D.C. communities, all our communities together. So there's something really beautiful about uniting with you and other beautiful teachers. Like, yes, like, you know, it's like hands up. So that's where I am in this moment, Tara. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's kind of amazing because not that many people can feel that they're holding the Black experience and the white experience in that kind of direct way that you've had that conditioning in your family. So I'm just wondering, can you share a little of how that comes forward? Like where in this society you feel identified in one way and stuff coming at you, and then identified also, I mean, you have a white parent. What's it like to have your white mom, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm sure others are curious like I am.
Well, you know, being biracial, it always helps you navigate, you know, roads. And I've been really good at that my whole life. You know, I can be in East Oakland, I can be in West Marin, I can be in the jungle, and I can find this way of navigating. And I think all of us that are really skilled at, you know, being a human, you have to navigate many roads and perspectives and understandings. But my mother is learning. Okay, so I didn't come from a mother who was like, Black Lives Matter, you know, at all. It reminds me a little bit more of Barack Obama's family. And he would talk about growing up with his grandparents who were white and his grandmother being kind of racist. It was a little bit like that. Yeah, and so it's been a wake up for my mother and that white side of my family, learning about why is there so much pain? What is happening? You know, so just like many people, they're on that curve, like waking up, something shifting. But you know, for me, I've always appeared as a Black woman, so that's been my identification. You know, so I just, again, the complexities of the heart, what we hold as human beings, it's vast. And so I hold that too. I hold it.
It takes a lot of bigness because I hear from so many of my Black friends, BIPOC friends, actually, what it's like to be around white people that are not intentionally working on it. And there you are, and you have a mom who's not only not working, but really in that, in the prison of something small. And do you get triggered? Do you try to, you know, change her? You know, how does it go?
Yeah, and I think this is a great question for everybody right now with our families. I mean, I don't know what issue has divided more people than this current administration and this topic around racism. You know, it's just, it's been a dividing factor and really painful, I think, for people. I think with my mother, I've come to realize she's my teacher of deep compassion and patience beyond patience. You know, I just keep resting in that. And I know that she cares, you know, and so I pull out the stream of the good, you know, and know it's a journey. And if people can do that with their family and friends right now, that there's a thread of beautiful heart in there. It's buried, but I just focus on that nugget, you know, and, you know, it's a whole nother story though about that. Yeah.
But that is what a beautiful response. I mean, for all of us, no matter where we're positioned, if we can keep seeing the gold, the goodness, there's room for all the conditioning that's there, because it's not her fault. I mean, all of us are racist. She was conditioned. So I'm curious though, because you actually work with a lot of white people in a transformational setting. I mean, this is very center for you. I think you told me there are more white than non-white in terms of in your Church of Harriet and the whole work you're doing around Harriet Tubman. And I know that everybody listening is really, I'm so inspired by it that I just would love you to speak more about what you're learning and what you're sharing with others on this one.
Yeah, so one of the responses, as we were talking about offline more of how we're responding to the moment, for me has been really calling on the ancestors, all of our ancestors. And I was very inspired to start a class around Harriet Tubman after I had this very prophetic dream, about me running. You know how we have these dreams where we're being chased, kind of classic Freudian psychology, maybe. And I'm not, many of us are probably having dreams of being chased by something right now, but I was running and I was holding on to the back of her jacket and we were running down a dark road. So there's all the symbolism, right? I can't see in front of me, I'm being led. And I somehow knew it was Harriet Tubman. And I remember saying, "Get me out of here, Harriet." And she said, "I will." And I was just behind her, like kind of blind, like just trusting. And so that led me into this very deep, profound connection to Harriet Tubman. And so immediately I thought, I'll do a class called The Dharma of Harriet, thinking that, it'll be interesting to some people. Wow, it has taken off. We sold hundreds of tickets and all these people. It was a 5-week class. And what surprised me is about 75 to 80% of the class was mostly white. I hadn't expected that, because I had this like chains and Harriet's image and me, and then I saw all these people who were so committed, that were like, "I'll do anything, Spring, to show up. I want to grow. I'm here. I want to stand up." And the class has been inspiring because it's not like a diversity training. It's like, how do we embody the strength of Harriet? How do we become conductors? All of us are conducting in our own life, whether you have children and you're at your kitchen table or you have a community online, you're conducting something. And so the class has been like a gospel celebration, so that's why it's going to continue. We're calling it the Church of Harriet now, and I just thought, I'm going to have this social justice class that is like uplifting, healing, and we're just bringing everyone together. So whoever comes on, I welcome them, I mean, we're in this together.
I'm thinking that many people have seen the movie and some people have read there's a bunch of books out. I'm just wondering if maybe you'd share it for you. What are some of the big takeaways from her life that like really let you know that, wow, we can do this. We can turn towards freedom. We can have that courage. We can go for it. Just a little more about what you're sharing about her.
Yeah, well, it's been so interesting, just as many people, we're sort of in history right now. I mean, we're debating Confederate flags. I mean, we're back in time. We're talking about Confederate leaders. We're talking about, we're just back in time, right? So Harriet, of course, would be popping up right now. So one of the things I think that has struck me the most about Harriet is people didn't know that she was a fighter in the Civil War and that she was a spy and that she helped rescue all these slaves, and she died with full military honors. Full military honors. And in fact, here's a funny story. Hillary Clinton helped her. They cheated Harriet even out of her pension. And Hillary Clinton in 2003 got a bill passed to give Harriet her due money. It was like $10,000. And she went to recognize, no, you guys, even then she got cheated, So there's a lot of mystical stories about her strength and courage. And and I just invite everybody this is our ancestor. And also to learn about all the Underground Railroad ancestors. Many we're learning in class, these allies, some died. And we're learning history together right now.
mm, mm, mm. What always just completely struck me about her is profound faith. Like she didn't sense herself doing things. She just felt spirit, universe moving through her. And it just feels like so much beautiful dharma, because she somehow or other knew just she could get out of the way, and trusted she'd know where to go if she was being chased. And she also had this vision. And I just wanted to bring this up, Spring, because this keeps hitting me, that in order for us to move forward, we have to have some vision of the what's possible. It's not like a blind hope type thing, but she had this vision that freedom was possible. And yeah, so it inspires me that we need to envision what we can create.
Mm. Yeah, a new world. I mean, her focus was ending slavery, and she did it. She was born a slave, but died a free woman on her own land in Auburn, New York, you know, her own. So she, yeah, and I think that's what we're holding simultaneously, is like the revolution can come, but then what? You know, what are the systems that we're manifesting? What are we co-creating as a human family? And so, yeah, I would love to hear more of your thoughts on that. And also, Tara, like, what was the catalyst for you? You know, like, you answered my email and you were like, this is so important. And I felt that. And I was so curious to tell more about, where have you evolved on this topic over the last few years? What has awakened in you? I think your story is also really inspiring, and I would just love to hear more about that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of passion and caring. And, I'm so aware of how it's been this horrific, slow through the centuries wake up for white people. So when I speak, Spring, I'm speaking, like, when I say we, I'm talking as a white woman, cisgendered, and in process. And I now I'm able to look back and sense some of what made it slow and what makes it now passionate and deep. And it started slow because I had this idea, like we all have this narrative, about my individual self. White people look at it as we're individual selves. And I came from this family that very progressive and liberal. My father was a lawyer into civil rights, and when I went to grammar school, I was one of 4 white children in an all Black class. And um, my parents believed in public schools, and and they'd have parties, and they were very integrated. And they abhorred any language, anything that was racist. So I had the so-called credentials of a white liberal person that now I see really gets us in trouble, because thinking that I was on the good side, racism's bad, I'm on the good side, it stopped me from really looking. It stopped me from investigating. And I lived even though, I was thinking, oh, my family's so progressive, the reality was most of my friends were white. I lived on the white side of town. Ended up when my father decided and my parents decided the schools weren't that good, and we know that's like that can translate to, oh, they're Black schools. They moved and they put me in a white neighborhood and white school. So we had that privilege, and I just didn't see the bubble I was in. And it started changing when I started having friends of color. I mean, that started breaking it down. It's probably about 20, 25 years ago. Then doing more diversity, equity, inclusivity work with the meditation communities. And I did a white awareness year long, and I continue to have different allies, white people that I process with. It was brutal in that it showed me the different some of the stereotypes. I want to just say that it just keeps unfolding. And what I found out was that I had to be willing to be really uncomfortable. And I still feel that, like I have to stay uncomfortable. And that allows me to see and see the stereotypes. I was in a mixed race group that our whole purpose was to understand each other and see, you know, how racism played out with each other. And this was before we had the understanding that mixed race groups can often be filled with microaggressions and actually not so productive. These are, you know, everybody had done a lot of work, but we needed more. So I found out a lot in that group, Spring, like it so shined a light on privilege. Like I remember one friend of mine in that group, you know, she's my age. This is a Black woman, DC, my age. We both had sons. My son, you know, I get him an internship on Capitol Hill, and I get him other internships, and he gets all the, you know, all the extracurricular to get into good schools and blah, blah, blah. You know the story. Her son, I mean, she was afraid for him going out any night he would go out. You know, he was a great kid, bright kid. She was afraid he was going to end up in jail. And so once I gave a talk and she was there, and I was talking about how important it is to give that message to our kids to, you know, be all you can be. And she came up to me and said, really, Tara, like where I live, you tell a kid to be all they can be and they're shot. They're in jail. What I need to tell him is how to take his hands out of his pocket to show a policeman he doesn't have a weapon. It just became clear in that group. You know, I sometimes talk about once when Jonathan and I went, my husband, you know, we were swimming and we decided to go swim out to an island, and I was like Miss Athlete, super Olympic swimmer, grace and ease, and then coming back was like exhausting and just wiped out. And I realized, okay, so I've got the currents carrying me. And since then, I've found out how easy it is for us to talk about where the currents are going against us, and how really hard it is for us to see how much we're riding in terms of privilege and how much that makes a difference in our lives. So you asked me like a question of what makes me passionate. It's the horror of it, of how much suffering and how where things go well for me mean it's taking from others. It's the sense of how racist conditioning in me deprives me of being connected to something larger that's rich and diverse and being friends, being real. It deprives me of that. So there's high level motivation. And what has gotten between me and embodying more, probably the book that's influencing everybody, you know, of White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo's book says it the best, that I want to feel like a good person, and the uncovering process makes me feel like a bad person. So I have to if I look at my trajectory, it was feeling like a good person. I'm anti-racist, I'm not racist, blah, blah, blah. Then in the last decades, all racist, you know, I'm as racist as everybody else. We're all racist, but taking it personally, you know, I'm bad. And then having to find my way really, really compassionate, and then seeing it, this is a group pain. It's not my personal badness. And what I've come to is that feeling personally bad and being fragile absolutely interferes with the movement towards waking up. It interferes. And I need other white people to be able to confess with and compare notes to remind me. We can't do it alone. I just need other white people to remind me that there's a basic goodness. This is group conditioning. And what it seems to me is in the moments I can do that, the caring goes deeper. I'm able to take in the suffering more and feel the suffering, my own and others, and I'm able to care more. And I feel like if I have to say what will nourish a revolution, it's that we care deeply enough to repair. It's like I keep saying to myself, care enough to repair. So I'm sorry to run on, but this has been so up for me. I've been, going at it so much that's what I'm left with, this care enough to repair and just to keep being uncomfortable.
Aw, I really feel your spirit on that. And it's a lot of emotion for all of us right now. And for people who are committed in a way, on this really deep level. And I sometimes wonder, I think one of the fears I have is the momentum will run out. Like we're sort of at the beginning of this wave. What are your thoughts about that? How do we do a long-term revolution to stay at that, knowing that we'll have peaks and valleys? But what are your thoughts about sustaining this shift that's happening for us to not take our foot off the gas in spite of what appears to be these huge obstacles? Like, we can't go out on the streets anymore. The protests were helping, but now we're back in our houses. And like, I don't know, just your thoughts on how do we keep this going so people don't go unconscious again?
Yeah, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it's really the key question. And I was talking to one Black friend who was a civil rights organizer, decades, and she said, Tara, I'm hopeful, sorta. She qualified it, and she said, white people have marched before, they've protested before, and they're ADD, they forget. And it's like they can go off to another cause or another preoccupation. So what will help us keep caring? Because a revolution comes from like truly a consciousness revolution. And so, my sense is that something has cracked open. And I know we've talked, we can feel it. Like there's a way in which there's, even though it's been happening over and over again on a daily basis, this profound violence to Black bodies and minds, somehow or other more people are getting it and are kind of cracked open. So it feels to me like we can't keep sustaining. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon thing. We can't keep sustaining unless, and now this is the white people, I'm speaking about white people, unless we really commit to looking at it like, just like on the whole spiritual path, this part of the path is a life effort to keep seeing the conditioning, and that we commit to actual forms where we look together and where we commit to acting on it. And it's going to mean giving up something, to talk about repair. Well, if we've been for centuries building our economy on the backs of Blacks, if we've been taking through privilege in every possible way, it's going to mean that we have to give and let go of our privilege. And that's going to take a real collective will. So the only thing that'll make us willing is if we care enough.
Yeah.
And I'll say one other thing is that I have to keep on purpose. It's so easy to go into comfort zones. And for me, the message is don't go into a white bubble comfort zone. Keep extending, because it keeps waking me up and it keeps waking my heart up. It's like when one friend described being in Lafayette Square and having all the screaming of Black Lives Matters, and then looking around and seeing it was a majority of white people, and then weeping. And he said to me, it made me feel human. It's like, I want to have my heart broken by my friends telling me things like that. That keeps, so that's what I'm imagining for all of us, that we need to have that being in the mix like that.
Yeah, there's something about
Yeah,
this being a heart-centered revolution. I mean, isn't that really
that's
this?
right.
Because I talk
Yeah.
to people all the time, you know, being steeped in Oakland, you know, activism for years. I work with activists. I would see a lot of burnout. And I know it's such a cliche, but I would say if your heart, you know, you do this because you love it, you know? You don't do it out of guilt and shame, you'll burn out. You do it because you love being on Lafayette Square with all those people chanting. There's something that opens you. And you do it because you love justice. You know, you do this because you want a just world for your family and your great, 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 great grandchildren. You know, it's like we plant a kind of banner in the ground now. It's a personal revolution and a collective one. It's like, what are my values? What do I, you know, stand up for? And so for some of us, I feel like I want to speak a little bit to the silence that has always surrounded this. You know how people see, even here in near Spirit Rock, there's somebody who made this huge mural on this, like a side of a barn. It's huge. It says, "Silence no more," you know, and it has like a whole, they've been adding to it every day, you know, like different
Mhm.
images of Floyd and, you know, but a biggest piece is silent no more, you know, and so I'm really curious about, you know, having been in Buddhist communities for 20 years, and, you know, we've been talking about these things, and I've been on diversity councils and everything. And there's always a majority of, even in the wisdom councils, that never say anything in meetings. I know they care, they teach this, you know, but I guess that, what are your thoughts about that silence? And I was like, why do people, is it fear that you think that people feel afraid of being attacked? Or how do we work with the people who still care, but they feel too afraid to say or act, and they just witness everything without using their voice? How do we move beyond that? That's coming to me in this moment.
Yeah, and that's like a perfect question, because that's the case for, even when people don't care so much, they're silent. But when they even start caring, I think it's really scary, because I can speak for myself. I am really, really uncomfortable with the possibility that's actually an inevitability that I'll make a mistake.
Mm.
It's like everything I know about white fragility, and that we have to have a lot of sturdiness because we do make mistakes, and it has to be okay. You know, we have to be okay with those bad feelings and uncomfortableness. But for many people, it's too scary to make a mistake. And then there's this whole thing of, it just, you know, I'm in a group and it doesn't feel safe. And so white people often equate safety to, I'm not going to get attacked for my way of being. And it's so ironic, because the attack is just, okay, people being upset or angry, or saying, you know, you're wrong, you're doing something wrong. It's not like the violence that whites have perpetrated on blacks that makes safe a real word. You know, what is safe? It's psychologically feeling unsafe. We have to be able to tolerate it. And my sense is that we'll get more tolerant if we can work, white people, with each other enough to really, really trust our goodness, so that we don't collapse into that sense of scared self that's going to be attacked. We're just more resilient.
Yeah, and it's so interesting talking about that silence and that kind of shutting down. I was in an interview recently, and I was talking to a civil rights activist, a white man from here in Marin County, and he said, "Well, I'm so scared of black rage," you know, and I was like, "But I'm scared of white rage. Are you kidding me? Do you see the police? Like, this has been way more scary, you know." And it was just like a shift, and it was like, oh, right. I don't know. I just found that
That's so
interesting.
powerful.
I was
Just
like,
what you're
are you
saying.
kidding?
I
You
mean,
know?
it's the way Ta-Nehisi Coates puts it, that, you know, black people live with their bodies afraid.
Mm.
And for whites to say, oh, this is unsafe, we need to find the inner resilience to hang in. We just need to do it. But there is a fear of anger, and the anger is there. It's real. I mean, humans are wired to feel angry if they've been violated. So what about 4 centuries of violation? Getting handed the trauma, it's just, of course there's anger. And of course we have to be able to tolerate it. And I'll share one personal story, Spring, and I would love to hear your take, is that, I was in a different mixed group, and I was going through a period where I'd been sick a lot. So I, asked the group if we could meet less frequently. And this is a group around DEI kind of issues, because I was sick. And one of my friends, a Black fellow teacher, really pounced on me and said, I don't trust you. I don't trust your commitment. She was really angry at me. So after the group, I did a practice of RAIN, of self-compassion, and because I felt so, pushed away and misunderstood, but I was sick. It's not, I do care, how could you not think I care? And I came to more of a sense of, spaciousness, but I could not understand how my friend could have attacked me, when I really am sick. And so I went and talked to somebody else, and they said to me, Tara, for you, it's about your personal life, and it's about missing meetings and health and so on. But for her, it's a matter of life and death. It's like, you as a white person have the privilege to go to meetings or not. For her, if this stuff doesn't happen, it's a continued violence against her race. And wow, that was really important. I'm curious how that story lands, because for me, it was like, oh, I'm thinking of things on an individual level. She's thinking of things on a group level. And I have got to get that my identity as a white person is having an impact here.
Yeah, I think that that's a really beautiful story, because it's that complexity of your friend and you really are sick. And then here's this movement that's happening that everyone is trying to get people's attention for many years around. Black Lives Matter started years ago, centuries ago, so some people are more caught up than others. But I think one of the things is that we do have to have compassion for this part that is awakening in people, right? Because I think there's 2 levels to that awakening. There's that initial awakening, right, with white communities, and then they kind of become a little bit like the woke police. They start beating everybody up with their insight because it's so radical. They're just like on fire. They're just like, I can't believe I did not see this, and they're just like kind of whacking everybody, like whack-a-mole, anyone who comes around, Okay, just that's a stage. I think it's an important one. I have a lot of friends like that, or students, I would say, in the community. And, I say, okay. And then there is this kind of waking up that is like, it really does hurt, because we see unconscious behavior. And I do think there's a part that we do have to go through the grief with that. We're just grieving the harm that humans do to each other. We're grieving this wound. And I don't know how we're going to heal this wound in the US that is, genocide and, oppression of enslaving people for hundreds of years, everything kind of built on that. And so one of my questions is like, is there a role for the Buddhist community with our Dharma practice? Because here we are, we're sort of supporting and representing these Dharma communities in one way. Like, what do you think the role of the Buddha's teachings are? Because I think this is really, I'm grappling with this in my Dharma of Harriet Tubman class, because it's like the Dharma of Harriet. Some people see these things as very separate. Like, why are we talking about racism? We're meditating. There's still that, even within our Buddhist communities, this kind of push and pull. And so what are the teachings that are needed? I don't know. What are your thoughts about the Dharma and that,
So I want to ask you, actually, because you brought up something that is so key, that even in this Buddhist community, here you are teaching the Dharma of Harriet, and some people are saying, what's all this emphasis on racism? What does that have to do with the Dharma? And I'm wondering how you respond. I mean, what do you say to them?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not an uncommon question, and I can even feel it in the thought vibration of people when you're talking to maybe like, really tried and true Theravada, or any tradition, and Zen, or Tibetan, Vajrayana. Well, I talk about it as far as the two truths, that on a universal level, an absolute level, yes, we're stardust. We are made of light, and it's all compassion. And, it's a mystical journey, and we're all interconnected. But then I talk about the relative level. If you just stay in that absolute level, you're delusional on some level, because there's two truths to be recognized and held. It's like the heart has to hold, yes, there's emptiness, and yet there's form. And here on this conventional level, this is where greed, hatred, and delusion is enacted. And so we to fall all the way into that one also is too painful. Then I forget my star-like nature. I do have to remember that in the midst of all of this, like, this is a chapter spring in a great book, and here you are playing a part, and I see it as like a shamanic story. I have to, because that also is true, but I have to carry both of these, that this is the karmic level that we're working on here. This is the relative reality, where actions matter, what we do matters, what we say matters, what we don't do matters. And so I try to invite people in the Dharma community into that reflection, because sometimes spiritual communities can get way off into the universal and just don't want to deal with the conventional level. And that to me is a big mistake, because you lose compassion. If you don't want to be on the earth and you don't want to deal with this, you just want to be in the fifth dimension, I get it. I would like to do that too, but that's not the path of the Dharma. It's like, be here in the body, open to this experience. So that's kind of what I share around all.
I love it. It's beautiful. And in some way, there's just no way to separate truly realizing the emptiness of awareness and then the love that comes up when form arises. If you're really empty, you're naturally going to be compassionate. I think that it's a disembodied emptiness that denies the relative. It's like, if you're in your body and recognizing emptiness, your heart's going to be tender when you encounter form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it's like the heart is embodied and it's awake and it's responding to the pain. It
Exactly
just
right.
moves on its own. I just get up when I see someone falling. I don't have to think about it. I'm just like there, it's a spontaneous gesture of, help. Oh, somebody's needing something, I just respond. So the disembodiment, this is like one of the things that I was talking to somebody else about. This revolution has to be one of embodiment.
That's right.
It can't be intellectual. We can't heal this with just staying on the mind and doing graphs and analysis on, who has what, when, and how. It's something that has to be like a soul. It's a soul force,
Totally. And I think this is where the tools of Buddha Dharma are absolutely essential, is that our culture is very disembodied. So it's easy to kind of go into intellectual and to be drawn to some idea of absolute spacious reality and not feel in the body. And when you brought up grief, I think that unless we grieve, we can't repair. That we have to care so much that we're grieving. It's like, I have grieved that how much of my life I was cut off from a whole world of beings that are part of my heart. It's like, that's a very drab, narrow reality to live in a white bubble. I've grieved that. And then the more I get close to others and sense the violence of racism on their bodies and hearts, the more I grieve that. But if I leave my body, I don't feel the grief. So I feel like the training is to be really honest, like have that willingness to look, hold it with compassion and stay right here in our bodies. I mean, we have to do that. And I've watched for myself. I'm thinking again of this mixed group I was in, how when I got waylaid into, I mean, here this group is, and we're dedicated to authenticity and being honest and being real and being intimate with each other. And I was so caught up in the first few months, Spring, with, am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to, as my like white racist unseen bias stuff gonna, I was so caught up in that I actually wasn't taking in and attending to the wounds. And it wasn't until I, brought the self-compassion, and then that kind of freed me up, that I actually, in a very deep way, my friends kind of revealed the suffering that I hadn't been paying attention to. So it feels like our Dharma is like so needed right now, that training, and stay with it. It's called, affect tolerance. Stay with what's uncomfortable, be honest with it, and be infinitely tender and kind, so that you can really open to the wound and open to the love, and then act out of it. And we have to act. I mean, that's part of the Bodhisattva path. It's not enough to care. It has to be engaged caring. It's what I call radical compassion. That's why I wrote the book, is that it just has to, if we're not engaged, we're doing what you said, we're being silent, which is blocking our heart from expressing.
Yeah, and the being silent, I love what you're saying, that being silent is also being okay with what's happening on some level. When we're silence is a message, it's like what Dr. King said, like your the silence is like, whoa, more. And this is a time, like if you're on this call, you want to be part of this revolution, friends. This is historical. This is, you want to lay this marker down. You want to write to this. You want to share this with your children, your grandchildren, that you took a stand for. This is what was going on in 2020, summer of 2020, my goodness. And we don't even know where it's going to end. We know it will. But yeah, and hopefully what can be birthed is just more of the deep sense of interconnectedness. I mean, we all talk about that in Buddhism. I think this is one thing I will say that for me, Tara, has been really life-changing, and why I think I'm able to do the work I'm able to do in mixed communities right now and feel really good about it, is that in my shamanic years of doing shamanic work in the jungle, I have experienced interconnectedness on such a cellular level that it is actually hard for me when I'm talking to people to go into the concept of duality. Even though I appear as this, I'm still talking to like a part of myself. So in some ways, I feel like this conversation is easy, or there's some way I can be helpful, because I'm operating with this fundamental core of, I know the deeper truth. I don't believe that we're separate. We might appear that, you might believe that, I might have to even defend myself against that person, their actions. But on such a deep level for years, it has been, that's probably one of my deepest healings. I am one with this earth. I am one with this jungle. I am one with this Pachamama. I am one with 7 billion beings. It's like, this is my family tree. I'm stuck with it. There's no backtrack here. I was like, so I feel like understanding that on such a deep level has given me this ability right now to kind of use my voice. Like, I want to write this book about Harriet Tubman, and write this book about this interconnectedness of the railroad being, all people on it. So that piece about interconnectedness, so dharmic. I just thought that would be a beautiful reflection. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is kind of in a way our segue towards a final reflection, because I feel like a gift of this work is coming to realize that oneness, and the pain of not doing the work is we can't get out of that trance of a separate self unless we address the caste systems on all level, every type of caste system, because as long as we're feeling superior or inferior, we're not going to be able to trust that oneness. I know for myself, when I move outside and I'll see other creatures and say, we are friends. And whenever I reflect, we are friends, underneath that's a sense of we are one. And it's the only time, the oneness, when there's no fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what you emanate, Spring, is that your shamanic and your experience with interconnectedness has reduced the fear around separation, and enables you to then be a fantastic voice for this. So I really want to honor that.
Oh, thank you. And I know that's what, if you think about that, separation is the root of all the suffering. It's the environmental suffering. It's the capitalist. It's like, if you follow this rabbit hole and you keep going down, it's at the root is this egoic concept of separate self, white supremacist, I'm better, and so the revolution really is uprooting this root. And then it's like all the other pieces of the tree begin to naturally come in harmony, because we walk on the earth differently when we see this. We move about our lives in a different way by understanding. That's what's so amazing about it, is that it's a worthwhile exploration in these Dharma communities to take it on and to just do what you can with it. I think too, some people have a greater capacity to kind of dive in and, they want to pull the veils off. Other people are just peeling a tiny bit and, reverberating, and then a tiny bit more. And so it's okay, go at your pace. And I guess it's just like, there's so much beauty underneath this, and it's painful, it's hurtful, but this is just like the portal. We're in the underworld right now. We're all pulling it all off, and we're looking at it. But I do believe that, the heart ascends, we rise out of this. And I'm very hopeful because of these types of conversations that you're willing to have and you're excited about, and all these different teachers coming forward. And we're teaching about this in a way we wouldn't have had a year ago. This might have never been on your 2020 schedule. It might have been with you, but maybe not, it might have been like, how life is like, oh, these other things are.
No, it's become more centered for a lot of us. And it's just because of what you said, that it's because of heart. It's the caring. And I think that's just growing. And my faith is that awareness is awakening through all beings, and that the love for truth, the love to feel that oneness, the love for love will keep us moving. And I like you feel like we have to be really deliberate, because we know, as much as we love truth, we know a lot of defaults to go into trance. So that's why we need to just keep on holding hands like this.
Yeah, keep on moving, keep on showing up, coming to your events. I'm doing this weekly 5-week series has now become my Church of Harriet Tubman. So people can join me on Sundays. I will be trying to inspire. We'll be studying history, using Dharma principles, and gospel music. Gospel music has been really helpful for me right now. I don't know, my ancestors are just a way of those songs, especially the celebratory songs have been felt very meaningful. So I want to invite everyone to come to my Harriet class, and you can look that up on my website, springwasham.com. But
well, dear, is there anything else that you can think of right now before we do a little closing reflection that you want to share? And I, by the way, applaud this Church of Harriet. It just so resonates. It's beautiful.
We need more church services, right? Where we're just like singing and dancing. And we are going to need this because we're in the long haul. And we're going to be back in our houses here. And so Sunday mornings and Saturday mornings and all these live streams and online things are going to be very important, and people will be tuning in. But no, I'll just say I'm just grateful for you, Tara. Grateful for your beautiful writing, radical compassion, all of it, all your work, all your books, in your heart. I just feel grateful for you.
Thank you, dear. So we'll do a brief closing, but thank you, Spring, for being willing, and because neither of us had an idea of how this was actually going to unfold. So it's been lovely. And Rhonda, a deep bow and thank you. I'm so grateful that you were able to join us. Rhonda and I go back 15, 20 years. So this is part of that sense of heart connection. And to all of you who chose to be part of this, it's really beautiful to be holding hands and stepping forward. I think of Harriet Tubman and, you know, the courage and faith to move towards freedom. And for we white people, it's the courage and faith to be able to go into the, she went into the shadow south and to the, you know, the plantations. We have to go into the shadow of our psyche and move towards freedom. And we're all in it together. Everybody's doing that. So, or everybody, that's our process. So in that spirit, we'll do a very brief closing reflection. And wherever you are, just find, just maybe move around a little, make whatever subtle shifts in how you're sitting so that you're upright and relaxed. Take a few full breaths and let the breath help collect your attention. And take a moment, letting the breath resume in its natural rhythm to relax whatever might have unconsciously tightened in your body, maybe the shoulders, maybe soften the hands, loosening your belly, relaxing your heart. And just to sense in kind of a big way what these times mean to you. What does an anti-racism revolution mean? Or what is all that's unfolding around the violence of racism? How is your heart, your psyche holding that? And you might sense, what are these times calling forward in you? What's the aspiration? What is your heart longing for in terms of your own unfolding and the unfolding of our world? Just sensing your prayer. And notice if there's anything you sense in the background that you're conscious of that gets in the way for you. The fears, the preoccupations, the self-judgments, just to include that in awareness. Anger, hopelessness. So you might sense the shared field we're in, where there's a deep heart aspiration for more love, more freedom, and all the human conditioning like streams moving through it that we can collectively hold with compassion. Just to feel that heart space of compassion holding our conditioning. And from that open heart space, from that aspiration, you might just ask yourself that question: what would love have me do today? How, in a very particular way, does your heart want to move forward these next moments through this day? And together we can kind of inwardly bow and honor that aspiration. May all beings realize and trust the loving awareness, the goodness that lives through all of us. And may our lives, our words, our actions come from that loving awareness. May we wake up from the trance that perpetuates all caste systems, all injustice and violence. May all beings everywhere awaken and be free. Again, my friends, a deep thank you for being part of this. And we have your emails. You'll hear whatever's going to come next if we have another plan that we cook up. Meanwhile, all blessings to all of you. Thank you.